Welcome back to the Metaphysical Report. We are your co-hosts. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Steve.
Welcome to our channel. I am a psychic coach and healer. And Steve?
I do acupuncture, but in this case, Vedic astrology.
Awesome, yeah. So our channel is all about metaphysics and spirituality with a focus right now on numerology, my forte, and astrology, Steve's forte. So what are we talking about today?
Well, today we've got the forecast for April,
Okay.
right? So we're moving into that, and just to kind of give people a bit of a heads up, and we're looking for this to kind of be a monthly recurring segment that we do. So hopefully
Love
it kind
it.
of gives people some really good insights. I know I'm constantly looking ahead of time and just kind of get a sense, as to,
Right.
what the energies. So we're going to do that. I'm specifically going to tailor it towards the United States chart,
Sure.
right? And kind of speak to that. But throw in there the aspects that will be personal as well for people to kind of take a look at to see, hey, if you're this sign. So, but really kind of more focused on the United States, so people kind of get a sense of heads up, and
Sure.
Maybe that might morph into what we do more personalized ones, or
Yeah.
that thing. But we're kind of going free flow and kind of see how that goes. So,
Okay, sounds good.
so you got people's numerology kind of set up here.
Yes. So worldwide, as a collective, our personal year number for 2023 is a 7. A 7 is a very feminine energy.
Okay.
It is a year of being receptive. Okay, it is not a big year of taking a ton of action, of initiating. Of course, there will still be those things, especially as it revolves around the energy of a 7, which is that receptivity, is that feminine nature, is reflection, it's analyzing, it is growing our faith in spirituality, and it is spending time alone to do all those things. So worldwide as a collective, that's where we're all at this year. Now, looking at the US specifically, 2023 is a 9-year.
Wow.
Okay.
That's significant.
So huge for the United States this year. It is a big time of change this year, and it is a big time of endings. So change, endings, releasing, letting go of things that no longer serve us anymore. Okay, so with that being said, it can be a very chaotic, a very dramatic, and emotional year. And tying in that feminine energy, the emotions.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it can be a very emotional year for us, especially those in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, breaking that down closer and smaller, April is a 4-month. If you look at, it's the 4th month of the year, right? And what is a 4 about? A 4 is about work ethic. It's about hard work.
Okay.
It's about discipline and focus, right? And really working on our stability and our security, okay? So that's sort of a paradox to the collective energy, right, worldwide of a 7, right? Because the 7's the feminine and the 4 energy is more masculine, right? So we have to deal with that. So the 4. So with all that being said, with the 4 energy, that can also make us feel restricted. Okay? It can make us feel limited.
Got it.
Okay? So, let's see. Oh, and then April, if you look at the actual letters of April, so April, each of those is associated with a number. So if we add those up and reduce it, we get a 2 energy. So also in April, it is a month of relationships, of connection, of working with others, creating harmony in our connections. Okay? And giving. It can be a very selfless month of giving. Yeah.
So you've got the combination of that. The 4 is the 4-month, right? So,
yes.
Yeah. So in a sense, there's some sense of limitation, restrictiveness,
Totally.
kind of occurring.
Yeah.
For the United States, for collectively, collectively.
Collectively. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we might be hearing some more difficult news,
Sure.
More sort of normal kind of thing. So would that also speak to maybe not necessarily recession, but definitely an economic slowdown or some kind of that kind of feeling, that level of restrictiveness.
It could, in a sense, just in general for this year.
Okay.
I would say with that 7 energy.
Yeah.
Because that's more of a retreat energy.
Yes, I see that.
Right?
Yes.
So a recession would be, that would go right along with that energy. But the 4, because it's such a month of action.
Okay. There's still things being done.
Right. There's a lot of work being put in.
Okay.
Yeah, in April.
Okay. The other thing that was occurring to me, the United States 9 year, right? So so there's more things connected around closure, things previously that we've been dealing with the previous 8 years coming back for closure.
Totally.
So we can kind of
babe. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So also with the 9 energy this year for the US, we are wrapping up a 9-year cycle. The last 9 years, we are wrapping all that up and getting ready for a fresh new start next year.
Interesting. So what could potentially that be? So we're wrapping up stuff that we started in a 1. So when was the 1 then?
Sure.
Let's do some quick math. Try to think about that real quick. So 2014 or 10 years ago was
2015?
2015.
Wait. Okay.
Just.
Well, wait. Okay, so 2015.
6 and 2 is 8. 2016. 27.
That was a 9.
2016 was a 9 then.
Yes.
So 2017 was a 1.
Yes.
2017 was okay. So whatever we started for United States in 2017, we will see come back around again, but for closure.
Yes.
So this is what it makes me think of. The first thing it makes me think about, right?
What?
Same thing you're probably thinking about. Trump was inaugurated. He won the presidency in 2016, but was inaugurated in 2017, January 2017.
Right.
And that was a 1. That was a new beginning for the United States. So Trump is back on the scene again, right?
Right.
That's one theme, but more as a closure of some sort with him and what he represents. So that's interesting to kind of see how that plays out. But that's definitely a theme of him because now people are getting prepared for the 2024 election, which will be right. So that that dovetails really nicely.
Right.
When you consider that, so that means 2024 will be a one year for the United States. So something new and fresh. So may not be Trump, right? People are thinking that way, right? Right. So, that is something. Okay.
Or at least, it could be that way, or he does something totally different.
Correct. Yes. Yes. If it is him, it does completely different and a different approach or something like that. But the fact that he's back on the scene again definitely speaks to the 9. I mean, that's just he's coming back around again. It's like unfinished business. Things are not resolved, which is again, what he's been talking about and all that. So it is interesting to kind of see how that's going to play out.
Right.
Just looking at it objectively, like, that makes sense. So everything that we started doing, a lot was under his presidency,
Right.
So even some of those policies maybe coming back,
right.
And again, maybe not even just him himself, but just some of those policies either being maybe people are going to try and go back against them and undo them.
Sure.
Or, so all
or
that.
Things he started.
Yes.
Paths he started could also
certain policies under there. Yep.
Could be ending.
Yeah, could be ending as well. So this is the way. Yeah, that's what I love about numerology. When you can, it's like you look at it, it's just like boom, it just hits you right there, and it's just really obvious. It doesn't have to guess too much. You're like, oh well, that makes sense, and we're getting confirmation and corroboration with what's going on.
So this year for the U.S. is all about closure, and next year is going to be new beginnings. But it can also feel like a chaotic year next year as well, because it is all about changes. So it's like new chapter in a lot of changes, and that can still be overwhelming.
That can still be overwhelming for folks,
Yeah.
And the fact that it is an election year, right? that speaks
Right,
to that
new
as well.
beginnings.
Great new beginnings, policies be enacted,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think a lot of people's, especially coming off this past 3 years of COVID,
Right.
people are going to be looking for new things and new initiatives to kind of play,
Mm-hmm.
and we're already kind of getting a sense of that, right?
Right.
You know? And kind of from our previous show when we talked about Pluto in Aquarius,
Right.
these new things coming, right?
Yeah.
That this 1 year for the United States will initiate
Mm-hmm.
that you know, usher in a lot of new beginnings and across the board on so many different
Yeah.
levels. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So what's
Pretty
going on astrology wise?
Oh my goodness, there's definitely, you know, definitely things going on here, astrology wise. So I am also going to be looking at the United States chart as well.
Okay.
You know, detailed but not like granular, super, you know, but detailed enough. So there's definitely some things happening here. One of the things here for the United States that I was considering looking at, definitely things going on with the market, right? Stock market, the U.S. economy, that is looking challenging in some ways, to be quite honest. And part of that has to do with, don't mind me, just getting my chart set up here. So since, I want to say August of 2022,
Mm-hmm.
Mars has been in the sign of Gemini, you know, for the
Oh.
last 8 months or so. And in March, it finally starts moving out of there, and then by April, which we're going, it finally is in a new sign, which it hasn't been since, you know, August of last year,
Right,
right?
okay.
So that's a huge shift, and the reason that's
Okay.
important is because Mars is a planet of action and taking
Right.
action, and so when it was in Gemini, it was very much more connected with the air and
All over the place.
all over the place,
A lot of
and
irons in the
scattered, and-
fire. Yeah.
absolutely, and not really necessarily feeling fully productive because there was
Right.
just so much energy going on and people feeling pulled in so many different directions. The market being chaotic,
Right.
you know, we saw the FTX collapse.
Right.
We just saw this bank collapse just a couple, you know, not too long ago here.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley Bank. All these things, you know, with so much chaos going on.
Right.
Now we're finally getting Mars to move, and then what happens is Mars goes into Cancer, where it's debilitated. Right? So it's like it's finally moving, and it goes to a run. Right? Exactly. So now that can still cause some major difficulties, because when Mars is debilitated, so what does debilitation mean? Well, there are certain planets, certain signs that a planet does very well in, and the planet is able to bring out its characteristic sign of who it is. So the sun being exalted, the sun is exceptionally brilliant and
Right.
compassionate and just really kind of doing sun things, fame and recognition, you know, those type of things. Whereas when it's debilitated, then it's lack of confidence and feeling, you know, that you're not really getting your due and tend to be victimized. You know, that's when things
Right.
are, so what is Mars? Well, when Mars is feeling very strong, Mars is able to be courageous and take action,
Mhm.
right? Very logical, right?
Mhm.
Like, okay, I see what I'm doing, and I'm doing it in a very logical step, but more importantly, taking action for itself.
Right.
When Mars is debilitated, then you get the negative side of Mars: frustrated, anger, violence can, you know, that
Right.
can come out as well, where that Mars is very frustrated. And so it depends. So I think people may feel that themselves this month,
Mhm.
especially if Mars is in any of the degrees that it'll be, right?
Right.
So you can look up your chart and see kind of what specifically that degree is in Mars is in. But also any planets that Mars aspects when it's in debilitation
Right.
will also be prone for that negative aspect of Mars, very brusque, you know,
Okay.
not very couth, just kind of say what they need, very short-tempered, that kind of energy, right?
Okay.
So for the United States itself, it's actually in the United States 8th house, and the 8th house is the house of banking, right? So it looks like the theme of more problems with banking, the banking industry, the banking sector looks
Okay.
to be going to be problematic for April, and which would kind of make sense considering what had happened in March,
Right.
right? And now this is kind of continuation with it. And the United States has quite a few planets in, and I'm using the United States chart July 4th, 1776 at 8:30 p.m. This was, I'll just speak a little bit about this chart.
Sure.
I really like this chart. And this is the chart that was rectified by one of the people I very first went to for a Vedic reading, James Kelleher.
Okay.
And he wrote an article in the Mountain Astrologer back in 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. And I read that article, and he basically rectified. Someone had wanted to know the U.S. how accurate it was, and
Right.
they were willing to pay him for his time to rectify it. And so he spent like this whole summer, apparently they paid him for that. So he actually rectified,
Wow.
read the actual records, and he feels that this time is the most accurate time for when it was actually signed.
Right.
Right. It was July 4th, and this was the time that he felt was accurate, because when he applied the Vedic astrology to it,
Yeah.
it ticked off each of the time
Sure.
periods, like anywhere from predicting the crash of 1929,
Right.
all the way down to like the hippie beat era. I mean, the 80s, like all the things got really ticked off. And
Right.
when I went and read that, it was reading that, I was like, okay, I need to go to the astrologer. And I was living in the Bay Area at the time, and he was up in that area, San Francisco
Okay.
Bay Area. And I drove down like an hour to see him,
Yeah.
based on this chart here.
Wow.
Based on this article where it is. So I've always been partial to using this chart
Sure.
for this birth data,
Yeah.
right? And so when I got into applying the tropical positions to it, I've maintained it, and it's still, I find it to be really quite accurate.
Sure.
When I use it. So that's what this chart is. It's,
Okay,
it's at
awesome.
6:30 time period. And so this one has 4 planets of Jupiter, Venus, Jupiter, Sun, and retrograde Mercury in the 8th house for the United States chart. So the 8th house is, as we mentioned before, the 8th house of crises, right? It's things where things can break down, and having crisis-like situations, death-like experiences, if you will. But again, birth and renewal,
Right.
if you will, right? But definitely crisis. So things coming to a head.
Okay.
Which way am I going to go? And so it represents, the 8th house is a house that represents banking.
Mm-hmm.
Other people's money is what the 8th house represents.
Okay.
And other people's money are kept in where? Banks.
Right.
Right. So that's why, that's one way of actually looking at it. And so when the 8th house is being amplified here, it's taking center stage, Mars is going into it, and it's debilitated there, then we can expect some difficulties connected to whether it's like people feel frustrated with their banking and what it's doing. So Mars of frustration, anger at banks.
Right.
So bank policies, all of those type of things are gonna, they're gonna be, they're gonna come to a head here,
Okay.
if you will. Mars also represents, in terms of one of the things it represents, this by being Mars, is property, landed property.
Okay.
So there could be difficulties with bank loans for real estate. So maybe the
Yeah.
real estate sector is going to be problematic during this time. We're going to hear a lot about that
Okay.
happening as well. So I'd imagine that it's going to really affect the markets because
Sure.
Venus is there. So so I really am thinking there's going to be some stock market issues.
Sure.
The real estate sector, property sector is going to be, and banking, how
Right.
it relates, and the loans that are associated with it. So almost, again, I'm not predicting a crash, or it's not that, but there's
Right.
definitely going to be some turbulence in that sector,
Yeah.
without a doubt, right? We're going to be hearing those things
Okay.
occur connected with that. So
Right.
so that's one of the main things. Like, finally Mars is moving,
Right.
Finally, and it's like, oh, I fell into a ditch. But at least Mars, it's gonna be moving there. We do have a nice Jupiter Sun conjunction, right?
Okay.
So that's really good. So Jupiter Sun, right? So the Sun is exalted in Aries.
Right.
Jupiter's in Aries, right? It's going to be conjunct there. So it's really going to amplify and really help the Sun to.
Okay.
So what does that mean? Well, that's Sun stuff. So career, right?
Mhm.
So people who are Aries, their career is going to be very much highlighted, right?
Dr. Joe.
Dr. Joe, yep, exactly. In fact, a friend of mine who I was just looking at this chart the other day, same thing. I've been saying, oh yeah, there's gonna be some good stuff happening for career-wise for you.
Aries.
So Aries people, that Jupiter conjunction is gonna be really nice for career potential. It's also gonna be helpful for their health, right? So
Okay.
the Sun represents one's body in terms of health. and the radiance of that. So you probably find some solutions. Finally going to get that diagnosis that really helps you out. Finally get some information. You know,
I
that
love
doctor
it.
is going to like tell people like, oh, this is what I have, and be able to target it and really help with that. So that's really going to be important. Yeah.
My brother is in Aries, and he's been dealing with some health stuff. So
Okay.
that's great.
Perfect.
news.
Yes. Yeah. That
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Absolutely. So that's really nice. That conjunction occurs on April 14th. Excuse me. Nope. Pardon me here. I just had that before. April 11th, actually.
Okay.
So that it's going to be around that. So I tell people the time leading up to that, and and even a little bit after that as
Sure.
well. But as it leads up to it is when you're going to feel things kind of fall into place. You get a call, all of a sudden you're walking around and you see something.
Synchronicities.
Yep. So expect that. Look for those type of things as you
Okay.
approach the 11th.
Okay.
For that Jupiter conjunction.
Cool.
Jupiter Sun conjunction. Now, the Sun, of course, if we're talking about United States charts, represents the government and the presidency, and so this will be, whatever the government is looking to enact, it's going to be favorable for them to do it during this month.
Okay.
And it looks that there will be some type of government action of some sort. Now, interestingly enough, the Sun here will also be squaring that 8th house, right? So I wonder if it might not be, because of the difficulties that's going on with the banking sector and all those types that we just mentioned, that the government is then more empowered to, maybe deal with that, right? It is a square, and a square usually comes through difficulties of addressing it. So, maybe the government is like wagging its fingers at that industry and trying to like, okay, we need to do something here, so there'll be some kind of thing with the government connecting with that banking sector, but through a square. So there's definitely some difficulties, challenges with that. This is occurring in the exalted conjunction of the Sun Jupiter is going to be occurring in the United States 5th house. The 5th house is the house of entertainment and sports. Right, so there could be some sports. Well, we do know that April is the beginning of baseball, right? So there's probably something new going on. If that's the case, what that makes me think about? I'm not sure if you knew about this, but baseball is looking to enact a time limit, right? So they now have timers, right? Or that's being talked about at least in the minor leagues, and I'm not sure to what extent it's in the major league, not minor leagues, in preseason.
Okay.
And I know the plan is to put it in for regular season. I don't know if that's going to start right now. Yeah. But it'd be something like that. And that's kind of been a bit of a buzz, right? Because what they're trying to do is get the game to move faster. Sure. Right. It's the way things are now. It's like, oh my goodness, do we really need to spend 5 hours watching a game, whatever? So that would be there is something new connected to sports coming. That's just what appeals to me, Yeah. But also other sporting events this month will kind of take center stage, or at least people will, me personally, I'm an NBA fan, and so we're going to be in the middle of NBA playoffs, right, or right then as well. Actually, the beginning of NBA playoffs this month, in April. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's kind of something new happening. Yeah. So maybe something around a sports celebrity. Making news, right? Because the exalted Sun, it's that person
being in the spotlight,
being spotlight, a celebrity of some sort. Okay. If I remember, isn't this April the month of the Academy Awards?
I don't even know.
Is that coming up? Do we have time to look that up? Because I almost feel that.
Yeah, look it up.
I almost feel that's
so the Oscars,
right? The Oscars here. So let me take a look here real quick. Where's my phone? Okay. I'm just, if y'all don't mind, I got, because that actually makes sense if it is the Oscars, in 2023. When is that? Oh no, it's March 12th. Okay. So it's not.
But that's today.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize the Oscars today. Okay, as you can tell me, you can tell I'm not a movie buff. But the reason I was thinking that was because the exalted Sun, and so people in the spotlight, celebrities, entertainment. Right. So United States So there could be something
There
connected
could be
to
some
an event.
award shows going
Some
on.
award shows. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe there's just some news that we hear about a celebrity, positive in a positive sense
Okay.
that's occurring there. Now, interestingly enough, keep in mind that the ruler of Aries is Mars, and that Mars is debilitated.
Right.
Right. So it's possible there could be some difficult news that comes out around celebrity, around
So
sports.
negative or positive.
Negative. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
interesting because it's positive. That Jupiter conjuncting the exalted Sun, like there'll be, but the overall is being ruled by that debilitated
Right.
Mars. So it could be some difficult thing, and Mars does rule sports. So there might be some news around during this month about
Right.
that. Yeah. So that'd be
Okay.
interesting to see kind of how that comes about there. The fifth house is the house of children, so there could be some news about policies coming up, American children, and that's been really difficult. There's been increased anxiety rates, and
Sure.
there's been all these, they're falling behind in school. So maybe there's a government policy of some sort that will start being implemented, and to kind of speak to that.
Right.
But definitely, something with the United States children
Yeah.
and policy will be coming to bear on that as well. So we've got that happening. Let's see here. I saw the big thing really this month that we really will spend the most time talking is Mercury Retrograde.
Right, our
Like
favorite.
our favorite, right? So
Quarterly event.
3 to 4 times a year. Hopefully more 3 than 4s, and really we get Mercury Retrograde. So for those who don't know, I'm sure everyone's heard about it, and we really like to just break down a lot of the stereotypes about it, because there are ways to work with Mercury Retrograde really that can make it so much beneficial for you, right?
Right.
Now, we're not going to say be Pollyannish about it, and yes, it can be often a stressful time, but really, if you understand the dynamics of it and how it works, you actually can anticipate it and see how things are occurring while you're in it.
Right.
And for me, that's kind of how it developed for me. I started paying attention to it. I can tell you, it was around 2001, where I just started like, this is before I'd heard the term, but didn't really live it, if you will. I was like, that really is doing that. So I just endeavored to just pay attention to it. This was before I was just getting to astrology, Vedic astrology, but not really how it impacted my life. I was just starting to understand it. And so I was observing it. Fast forward all the way to about, I would say, I had a small business around 2004, and about 3 or 4 years into it, I kept noticing this pattern, right? It was like clockwork every single time, and it just occurred to me like, duh, this is Mercury, right?
Right.
So Mercury rules commerce, right? Merchandising, buying and selling, trade, like all those type of things, computers, all these things. And I had a business where every 2 weeks, people bought things from me.
Right.
Bought farm food, things like the natural foods, all that kind of stuff. I noticed that every Mercury retrograde, sales would go down, like clockwork.
Right.
To the point that after a while, I was like, wait up, I need to just anticipate this and match my spending accordingly.
Okay.
Right? So when I knew that time period was coming up, I just knew, okay, lower my expenses that month, or for that 3-week period, basically a month.
Yeah.
And prior to that, don't overextend myself. And after that, know not to expect that it's just going to pick up right away, but to know, right? So I basically kind of cocooned myself a little bit. I gave myself a lot of buffer zone in my expenses in doing my business, and that problem now it was no problem. I mean, it was like clockwork though.
Right.
Instead of getting my normal 70, 80 orders, I'd be like 50 or 60, right? And so from that, I learned how to navigate that, and that's really what I've been trying to teach people.
Right.
You can really work with that, so especially if you are in a business that's about business, right? Your customers and sales, you just notice it becomes a little chaotic. Sometimes they're a lot chaotic.
Right.
So Mercury goes retrograde 3, sometimes 4 times a year. And retrograde means it looks like Mercury is going backwards across the sky. And therefore things connected to Mercury are held back, right? Or they go on the fritz. Computer crashes, you know, you didn't hit that button. You meant to hit save and you hit delete.
Right.
Been there a couple times, right? So you end up in Mercury that you have to redo things, right? So
Right.
retrograde, return, redo, right? It's always going to be that re-word, R-E,
Yeah.
replay, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to return to things. So you end up doing things twice, if not 3 times,
Right.
Mercury retrograde. So having that as a built-in understanding of Mercury retrograde, you just anticipate that and go slow. If you make that mistake, okay, I'm going to repeat this. Again, another RE word,
Right.
right? You're going to repeat that.
And to like reevaluate.
Reevaluate, yes.
You know,
Yep.
before you spring into action on brand new things.
Exactly, yeah. So if it's something that previous that you have been thinking about, this is the time to get back on it, right?
Okay, right.
So you like, let's say 2-3 months previous, you looked into something, it just didn't quite work out then. Well, Mercury period is a good time to revisit that,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Because now what I typically find, another pro tip concerning Mercury, is I find that whatever was problematic in a previous Mercury retrograde, if I had done something and I kind of got entangled in that, whatever it could be, I ordered something, it didn't work out, I have learned that it sometimes takes and often takes the next Mercury retrograde to create the conditions for me to untangle myself untangle and finish myself up with that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I found that across the board. So what I typically have learned not to do is, if it's anything new, not to sign that contract, not to start something brand new.
Right.
Right. But for our audience out there, if you have, just go back and see when was the last Mercury retrograde. Right. It's going to be around that time period that you may have like, oh, that's how I got myself in this. And now Mercury will bring that situation back up again,
right,
to allow you to get yourself up out of that.
Totally.
Right? So you'll see those themes come up again with retrograde. So retrograde is actually the April 21st
okay,
to May 14th.
Okay.
There is something called the shadow, right? We talked about before, and that's 2 weeks prior and 2 weeks after it goes retrograde, right? So it's almost like a little bit of a preview, right? It's not fully on retrograde, but you kind of notice, and I get calls from clients that are just like, "Are you sure?" Or texts, "Are you sure it's not Mercury retrograde yet?" And you know, I almost always it's a it's a shadow period that foreshadows, right? If you will, things going on, and so I've learned to be aware of those things. The other very classical thing with Mercury retrograde that I tell people to be aware of is that you get enamored and you get hyper focused and just like, oh my God, I definitely have to do this thing, and you get caught up in certain things, like your your mind. I don't know what the word I want to use.
You get like obsessed.
Obsessed. Thank you. That's actually the word. You get obsessed about certain things. Sometimes the triviality of things, right? It's just like, man, I just love this thing. No, this is great. This is gonna work, right? Across the board, whether it be a relationship, whether that be, for me, it's almost going on the internet and I find some device I want to buy, some gadget. I'm very much into all these types of gadgets. Almost all during Mercury retrograde, that happens. But oftentimes it's like something that, like, wait, I could really use that.
Yeah.
And then you want to read all the specifics about it. You read the reviews.
Yeah.
You go down that rabbit hole, right? And then, it's like, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger on that. I'm going to go get it. Mercury goes out of retrograde, and you're like, what did I get this for? What's this all about? Like, you completely fall out of love with that thing and things like that. So I don't know, have you had that experience?
I'm sure I have.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things you have told me in the past is anything that comes back into your life during Mercury retrograde, you want to see if it actually lasts.
Yes.
Because it could come back for a renewal, or it could come back to finally get that closure.
Yeah. Right? I've definitely seen that. Yeah. So totally get that. So I've told people, especially if people have Mercury as the ruler of their 7th house of relationships. So this would be for Pisces ascendants and Sagittarius ascendants.
Okay.
For those two people, if you have that as your ascendant, then I tend to find relationship. If you're in a relationship, there could be some communication issues with your husband, wife, significant other, what have you.
Yeah.
That could be an issue. If you're not, then you may, if you're single, then you may get communication from exes or
Right.
all that for sure can is definitely something I've seen over and over again in my life, my clients' lives. And things like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing a separate show with Venus retrograde, because Venus retrograde is going to be this year, and we'll definitely get to talking about that as well, because at the same time Venus is retrograde, Mercury will be going retrograde just when Venus ends, or it's something like that.
Right.
I can't remember. So
it's interesting.
It's like this tail end kind of thing,
Yes.
and then we go right into Mercury retrograde as Venus comes out of retrograde. So
Right.
it's all there. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one thing I've seen with people with retrogrades, Mercury retrograde,
Right.
excuse me, that communication from exes and people kind of
Right.
come back in your life to that extent, or at the very least there's communication of some
Sure.
sort,
Yeah.
they reach out, or you may feel you to reach out to them.
Right.
You just want to make sure, is this a real thing, or is it just kind of like a little mild obsession?
Right.
To kind of see if that's, but either way, there's usually some level of closure.
Totally.
That can definitely be attested to when you
Yeah.
do that. So that's Mercury retrograde. So I tell people, and this is what I've done to kind of help myself with that becoming obsessed. My tool, pro tip number 2 or 3, wherever number that is, I actually create a draft file, and as I'm surfing the internet, if there's something that catches my attention, I read up on it, and then I grab the link, and I put it, and I just create a list, and it's called Mercury Retro stuff.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
To get back to.
Right.
And so I don't buy anything then. I just go do my obsession
Okay.
stuff with it. I research it, right? And then once retrograde is over, past the Mercury shadow and all that stuff, I go back and read those things and look up and be like, then I really want that stuff now. And most of the time it's like, no. Other times it's like, okay, yeah. Like I just did that just the other day, because we're out of retro and I know we're about to go into it, right? And I said, okay, let me see if there's anything I want to purchase before retro, before I go back and I was, oh wait, yeah, I've been needing that. It's not, it wasn't too much money. It wasn't, and I was like, yeah, okay, now I did it. So I kind of disciplined myself, but I knew I had to put in roadblocks to prevent myself from just going completely crazy with my Amazon. Right?
That is so cool that you do that. That's a great tip.
Yeah. So that's something that I've done. I'm hoping that might be helpful for you guys out there to have a little list of Mercury retrograde. Because the good thing is that during Mercury retrograde, you can actually get good tips and books and information. Absolutely, there could be some insights there that are absolutely positively beneficial. So I just keep those cataloged, in that list. And sometimes I end up engaging those. But either way, those are always. I always get some kind of nugget of something that's really helpful. Now it happens to be that I'm running a Mercury period. So Mercury retrograde are especially. And in Mercury in my chart is actually well disposed. It's exalted.
Right.
Hence why I'm an astrologer. Right. Obviously, so that in that sense. But so anytime significant things happen with Mercury, like a retrograde, I've been noticing for the last 5 years I've been in it. And I'm like, oh wait, that's really timely. Oh my God, that really gave me some insights on X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So for those of you who have very well placed Mercuries, or Mercury time period, if you want to know, you can schedule a session to figure that out. But you will definitely be able to. You'll definitely notice the positives of it. For sure. Yeah. So what else? So from the 21st to February 14th, again, the classical thing: not signing new contracts, leases.
Right.
Listen, be super careful.
No contracts.
You're John Hancock on something. You want to be really careful about that. If it is something you've been looking at before and now it's opened up, by all means, right? You're resolving that. You're coming back to that situation. Different story. But if it's a brand new house and all that's, listen, not saying you can't do it, please, but be aware that there will be some mistake, misunderstanding, misperception, right? That's what Mercury represents, right? Those MIS words.
Where you'll have to go back and
you redo it. Repeat that process. And it's what it is Mercury makes us misperceive things. Oh, I thought that number was this. I thought it was that. That's the Mercury thing, right? And it's just these little slight like brain schisms, like right? It's like, but oh my goodness, how come I didn't see that?
Right.
That's very much a Mercury thing, right? especially as it relates to our world, which is run by computers. I mean, so it's all, basically, if you want to know what our world is, it's all Mercury, right? It's all Mercury.
Yeah.
The digital age, the communications, transportation, any type of connections,
right?
It's all run through the internet right now, right? And so, hence why, it's really problematic when we have Mercury retrogrades, more so than any time in our modern, really modern life,
right?
It's all run by that. So if people are aware of that with Mercury, then it's a lot smoother. And so hopefully some of those tips I've given you, right, will allow you to kind of navigate that easier, right? So being aware and following, that pattern. I always tell people when I counsel clients, especially if they're business owners, to mark down Mercury retrogrades on their calendar.
Totally.
Right? Like put it in, mark those in red so you know it's coming up, and plan accordingly before, right? Because again, deliveries are going to be delayed. There's just
delays, detours.
Yeah, you're going to be stuck in traffic. All those type of things. If you anticipate that, you give yourself a lot of leeway with Mercury, right? A bit of a buffer to navigate that. So, and then the other part about writing down ahead of, during retrograde, what you're excited about, what you see, what's coming your way, and not necessarily pull the trigger on those things. We'll wait until afterwards, potentially, to do that. And you do that, and you're just able to more readily navigate. And it only takes about 2-3 sessions. If you do that consistently, you just notice
to get used to it.
You notice your normal ebb and flow. You notice a normal ebb and flow. And so I know what my patterns are. I've definitely have felt that, and it's just part and parcel of my life now. Like I don't feel Mercury retrograde. I don't, I know it's just the natural way, and I see, okay, how can this benefit me? Right. And there are absolutely ways that it can benefit people. But it's just when you get blindsided by it.
Sure.
That's when it hurts. And it took me a while to get unblindsided, and it still happens here and there. But it's more like, oh, okay, that's right, that's Mercury. Okay. And so let me just navigate that a little differently. So this is probably more so than almost any other configuration that I feel that people can kind of baby step themselves into how to use astrology constructively. Right.
It's through Mercury retrograde.
Through retrograde, I would say, because some of the others are just more difficult. Some more heavier planets, they're doing some heavier duty things, right? Mercury, they can definitely cause some problems, but at least you can start feeling, it's almost like training wheels to working with the planets. Like Mercury kind of helps you kind of deal with it a little easier, and then you can attempt to like a Uranus Pluto opposition to certain sensitive parts of the chart. Those are a little rougher. Right?
Okay,
So that's what we're doing there. So hopefully that's helpful to people, and hopefully that you feel you've gotten some things out of that you can use, because it doesn't have to be as painful as people make it out to be.
No, right?
Not at all.
We can just, how can we best use this time period when we know what's going on?
When we know it's coming. So for those, I'll leave you with this. I had a really good friend of mine that didn't believe in Mercury retrograde, or was at the very least highly skeptical. It wasn't like, so he works for Disney, and he works in the computer section, IT, all that kind of stuff. And one time he was mentioning to me how they had launched this product and then all these bugs and all these difficulties. And I just happened to know it was Mercury retrograde during that time. And I said, I think I could help you. He said, what are you saying? He said, what's going on? He told me what was going on. And I said, okay, so basically it went on the fritz in the beginning of Mercury retrograde, right? Okay. So I told him, okay, Mercury retrograde, I told him about Mercury retrograde. And I said, okay, your problem is going to end or be solved. The solution will be found on this day. It was basically when Mercury went out of retrograde. Right. I said, there'll be something significant that occurs on that day that's like, oh my God, I found a solution. And so I got like 2 weeks later, I get a frantic call from him. You won't believe what happened. I found that, there was literally a bug in the programming, and he found it that particular day. It solved all the problems that he'd had from 3 weeks back. Right. So now, what does he do? My skeptical friend, he puts Mercury retrogrades on his calendar, and he just knows if there's things that he has no control over, if they're just going to implement things, right? This would be something good for Disney people to higher ups to know not to implement big rollouts of software, update softwares during Mercury retrograde. Not a good idea.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you're an underling,
Yeah.
right, who has to implement that, then you know kind of how
Right.
to navigate that. And now, he has less stress about it.
Totally.
So he constantly tells me now that, oh, okay, yeah, and sure enough, it's like clockwork. He says it's amazing. So I found that very, a non-astrological person
Right.
who can use that. If he can use it, anybody can use it.
That's right.
So it's really fun.
All right, so let's look at the human design aspect of this month. So we have a few gates going on in April that are activated. And gates, we'll just look at them right now as themes going on this month. So there's about 5 gates. We have 42, 36, 2, 24, and 27. So it's interesting. So like I said about the 4 energy is all about limitations,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And we have the feminine aspect here with the human design, which is talking about receptivity, right?
Yes.
That feminine energy growing, spirituality, rationalization, trying to conceptualize individually, and also breakdowns, creating growth, creating breakthroughs.
Yeah. Okay. See that.
So that's what's coming in through the human design. And then I also pulled a couple cards for us. I pulled a couple tarot cards and oracle cards about April. So one, we have the 8 of Pentacles. And this is all about putting in a lot of hard work. So completely complementary to that 4 energy,
Yes.
right? Of hard work, discipline, focus. So, and then we have the Ace of Swords, which is a beautiful thing to come in because we're going to be, starting at the end of the month, we're going to be in Mercury Retrograde. And the Ace of Swords is all about getting clarity through the fog, okay? This can talk about breakthroughs in communication. And this can also talk about things getting better after things have been hard for a while, okay? So that's great to get, especially in a month where Mercury retrograde is is starting, especially with shadow, but it looks like there is going to be clarity seen through the fog here, okay? The truth will be coming out. We also have the clock card. So this is all about timing. This is about patience. And that's also part of that 4 energy, right? It's like putting in a lot of hard work for the benefits down the road. So this is talking about patience. It's all about timing and letting certain cycles play out. And then we have opportunities coming this month, and we have things going on with the market, with just piggybacks off of what you said earlier, the literal stock market and or the real estate market. There's going to be stuff going on there for sure. So yeah, so that's what's going on in April.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff happening. It looks like, and it's interesting because you pulled those cards before I even pulled this up.
Right.
So we didn't know at all, and then we were like, oh, okay. Of course that is. It's very synchronistic with what we were talking about. So this is why we do what we do. It kind of dovetails nicely.
Totally. So yeah, and then this is going to be a series that we're doing. We're going to do the month forecast every month, so you can look forward to that.
Yes.
And if you guys like the video, please like it. And if you vibe with us, please subscribe to our channel. We put out a video every week, and we'd love to hear your comments about how you feel about this month, how you're being affected, what you thought about what we said,
Yeah, anything that resonates with you, we love the feedback. We love just comments, just how it's connecting with you and what you see. So any suggestions, by all means, get that comment below, and we definitely read those and respond.
Yeah, and anything that you guys would be interested in learning about, please let us know. We're always open to suggestions. And if you would like a personal private reading with either of us, all our information's below where you can book that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.
All right, peace out from the Metaphysical Report.